Hello, welcome to AR on AR. I'm Madam Rose, and today I'm going to be giving you a few tips that you can use as a navigator. Quick shout out to Ben Racing. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. Much appreciated. And these tips that I'm going to go through, no particular order, but essentially this is the kind of information that can make a difference between somebody who simply knows how to use a compass and a team that knows how to navigate effectively. Okay, firstly, in my opinion, everybody in the team should have some idea of navigation. Why? And a lot of people are actually scared of navigation. Let's leave it to the navigator, I don't really want to do it. The point is, if you have one person in the team who's a competent navigator, what if they get sick? What if they get tired? What if they're in such a state physically that they just can't look at the compass and make any sense of it? Really, you want everybody in the team to have some idea of how to use that compass. And it's not a hard skill to learn. I've done a previous episode on exactly how easy it is to get to grips with the basics of a compass. So, you have no excuse. But ideally, everybody in the team has some idea of how to take a bearing, has some idea of compass work. So if the navigator is making a mistake, somebody else in the team can say, hang on a second, I thought we were heading north. Especially in a long expedition race, you want the navigator to be able to take a little bit of time off. Somebody else takes up that responsibility. The primary navigator can recover and then get back on the duties on a harder stage. Secondly, not only should everybody have an idea of how to navigate, I think you should have two decent navigators in a team. And that way you could leapfrog. So the first stage, you've got a primary navigator and somebody else's backup. Get to the second stage, you swap that priority. So continually taking turns at being the primary navigator, or it might even be a discipline thing. So on the trekking legs, somebody's a navigator. On the biking legs, somebody else does the navigation. It really, really helps, mixes things up, and again, relieves the pressure or the responsibility on what could be just one person in the team. Third, the compass needs to be balanced for the right hemisphere that you're racing in. If you normally race in the northern hemisphere, and you decide to go race in Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, or something like that, make sure you get a compass that's balanced for that hemisphere. A compass will not work in all locations around the world. Make sure you get a compass that's appropriate to where you're going to be taking part in that race. Fourthly, magnetic declination is an issue. That is the difference between true north and what we call magnetic north. It fluctuates all over the planet. We've got an episode focused simply on this issue, but just in essence, for every race you'll be getting maps. Make sure you take note of the date on that map, and that date and the magnetic declination that's written on the map will tell you how far there is a difference between true north, which is what your maps are pointing at, and magnetic north, which is where your compass is pointing at, and there can be a considerable difference. There could even be 25 degrees difference between what your map says is north and what your compass says is north. And you've got to reconcile that distance and be able to compensate for magnetic declination. Make sure you track time when you're navigating. On a bike, or on foot, or on a kayak, anything like that, make sure you have a way of working out how much distance you've covered by keeping track of the time. So for example, if our average pace is 5 kilometers an hour and we only need to cover 10 kilometers, it should take us 2 hours to get there. So make sure you know how to keep track of time to monitor the amount of distance you should have covered. Another way of tracking distance, make sure you know about pace counting. Either use what we call ranger beads or pacing beads as a way of tracking by pace counting, literally how many steps you've taken, and based on those steps, you know how much distance you've covered, and that'll help you to ascertain whether you've gone too far or not yet far enough to reach the checkpoint that you're aiming for. When it comes to kayaking, the pace tends to be fairly consistent, so pace counting is not something you tend to do on a kayak, or literally how would you do that? With paddle strokes, nobody tends to count paddle strokes. So on kayaking, we tend to focus more on time as a way of ascertaining, have we covered that distance yet, rather than any other form of distance tracking. Here's a tip I learned the hard way. It's not necessarily a good idea for the navigator and the team captain to be the same person. There are different responsibilities and both very important responsibilities. So ideally, your sole navigator and the captain are not the same person. when somebody is doing navigating, they need to do what we call put the head into the map. That means focus entirely on the task of navigation. Whereas a captain needs to keep a bigger picture about the team. Is everything functioning smoothly? Taking the load for somebody, keeping track on somebody's morale, all sorts of things like that. And if you have your navigator and your captain both being the same person, that can detract from either the leadership of the team or from the navigational accuracy of the team. If nothing else, if your captain is a navigator, you should have another navigator who can take that responsibility when the captain needs to focus on leadership responsibilities. Okay, in terms of practicing your navigation, I've got 3 recommendations. One is go into an area and practice just using the compass. Just put the map away in your pocket and practice just using the compass to get from A to B. The reason you just want to use the compass sometimes is to practice finding a route without having prior knowledge that a map would give you. So tracking across terrain, tracking across a mountain, tracking across through mountain passes, through woods, getting a feel without having a map to refer to. It's a good skill to practice, and it familiarizes, gets you acclimatized to the terrain, and it exercises your map memory. Okay, the second thing you can try is the opposite of that. Go to an area, work out where you are, and then put the compass away and purely use the map. I've done that many times. In fact, growing up in South Africa, I often used to go to the Drakensberg Mountains, which is a huge escarpment. And an escarpment is a very identifiable feature. So what we were able to do, certainly in decent weather conditions, is keep that compass in the pocket and simply use the map and terrain recognition as a way of navigating. It wasn't a matter that I needed to shoot bearings all the time and work on bearings. No, you don't always need to do that. Sometimes it's simply a matter of I've got the map, I can see the terrain, I can easily match the map to the terrain, and the compass doesn't need to come out all the time. And then my third suggestion is go to an area, keep the map and the compass in your pocket. Just, go for a walk for, I don't know, half an hour. When you reach whatever point, then pull out the map and the compass and try and work out where you are on the map. It's called relocating. It's a matter of, instead of going from the map and then trying to identify things in the terrain, it's the opposite way around. You know what the terrain looks like, and then you try refer back to the map and work out where you are on the map. Most people don't practice that particular skill, and it's really, really useful. Why? Because you will have seen this in Eco Challenge, people get lost. And when you're lost, what you literally have to do is look at the terrain. The terrain is truth, as it were. The terrain you cannot alter. You look at the terrain, and then from the terrain, you've got to say, well, based on looking at these different features, I must be at this location. Okay, you will need to do that. So you may as well practice that skill before you're in a race when the stuff's really going to hit the fan. Another big point, if you're a navigator, involve the rest of the team. Now, what I mean by that is not simply the idea I've referred elsewhere where you can have one person watching the timing, one person watching the pace counting. I'm talking about, as a navigator, tell your team what's going on. What you don't want to say to the team as a navigator is simply, we need to turn here, or we need to turn left, we need to turn right at this point. Just follow me, just follow me. That is the wrong approach to navigating. What you want to do is get the team to help you, and that's going to assist you as the navigator to lighten your burden. So literally, you tell the team, listen, in 3 kilometers, based on where we are, and there should be a pond on the left-hand side, and there should be a farmhouse on the right. We need to turn at that point. So now you've got not one set of eyes looking out for these features, you've got 4 sets of eyes, all looking out for that pond, all looking out for that farmhouse. So really tell your team, keep them informed as you go about what you're expecting to see. And that will help the navigator. If the navigator makes a mistake, the navigator says, we should reach a river in half an hour, and it's been an hour and nobody's reached you haven't reached the river, somebody should be going, hang on a second, you told us we were going to reach a river. So the whole team is looking out for that kind of stuff. That will make it just so much easier, and again, the whole team will feel involved. And it'll keep the team mentally alert. The final thing I want to say about navigating, and it's really, really, really important, is because navigation is probably the most important skill in adventure racing, it is the single biggest skill, I would say, or the most important skill in being efficient, is support your navigator. One of the worst things you can see happening in a team is when the navigator is making mistakes for various reasons, and the rest of the team gets on that navigator's case. and gets resentful and gets irritated and starts taking it out on the navigator, then the navigator loses confidence. And if a navigator loses confidence, then they start questioning themselves. So they question themselves, basically they're floundering. So what you need is a situation in your team, ideally, where if the navigator makes mistakes, if the navigator's got you to go up a mountain path for the last hour and then realizes they've made a mistake, the rest of the team doesn't turn around and blame the navigator. They turn around and say, it's fine, come on, let's go down. You've got to have a buoyant, supportive, compassionate, really, atmosphere in the team. And then when the navigator makes mistakes, they don't feel the rest of the team's eyes boring into the back of their heads. They don't see the rest of the team sitting there going, flipping heck, why have we been doing this? Why have we just been traipsing up this hillside for the last 2 hours in the rain? So if you can keep a positive, buoyant atmosphere in the team, regardless of the mistakes that are made, literally it'll be a joyful experience. And the opposite of that is the navigator loses confidence, the navigator feels all the pressure. There's a waste of mental energy when people are focused on what's going wrong instead of what's going right. Kind of cup half full versus cup half empty. Okay, so I would say it's critical that the team acknowledges before the race even starts that mistakes are going to be made and agrees before the race starts, listen, when those mistakes happen, we will support each other. We will, and you say this, it's a commitment, it's a promise to each other. Look, when that happens, because it'll happen, no plan ever goes perfectly. When those things happen, we'll laugh about it. You know, I'll support you, I've got your back no matter what, and we'll get through this together. I've seen world-class teams expressing that mentality, whereas other teams, they just fall apart, crumble apart because of that lack of understanding of how the team should knit together. After all, an adventure race is an incredible experience shared amongst friends, and that's what should, at the end of that race, you should come out of it going, we went through such difficult times, but we had each other's back, we supported each other, and we've come out stronger. And it's been an incredibly intense experience, but a rewarding experience. You want to come out of it smiling. That's really what I'm saying. Okay, hopefully this has been useful. See you in the next one. Subscribe and all that other kind of stuff. Yeah, there's so much to navigation. There's so much that can be learned, and I'm still learning. I'll just tell you that. If you are the navigator, don't feel too bad if you fluff it up occasionally. You just want to minimize how often you fluff up. Thank you. See you next time.